Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel Scary Interesting One, where we cover all tragic and terror stories. So if you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, plus ring the notification bell to be notified of all new uploads. Now let's get into today's story. In February 2022, Josh's daring soul drove him on an excursion of no return, and the occasions of that day would take his fans some time to recuperate from. Go along with us as we venture through the life. What's more, tradition of Josh Neuman, from his gravity-resisting stunts to his sickening last minutes, Josh Chris Neuman was brought into the world on August 16, 1999, in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was exceptionally athletic and grew up playing a wide range of sports, mountain trekking with his father, and in any event, doing parkour in 5th grade at 12 years old. He began longboarding, and that is the point at which he found his actual enthusiasm experiencing childhood in the computerized age. Josh started recording his skateboard stunts, utilizing his dad's camera. After only 7 months of longboarding, he took his energy to the next level by making his own YouTube channel. His excursion as a substance maker formally started on spring 21 to 2012, with the transfer of his most memorable video named Longboarding Ride. It Like You took it recorded on a tranquil neighborhood road. This video noted the start of his web-based presence. However, curiously, it was not his regular skating recordings that gathered the most consideration yet, rather his aggregations of shocking parcels. In the initial 7 years of his computerized profession, he acquired 5,000 supporters, and by his lesser year at the College of North Carolina, he settled on the choice to exit to invest each of his amounts of energy into proficient longboarding and his video creation. After some time, Josh extended his substance to remember runs for the Alps and Dolomites, and that is the point at which he began to acquire a ton of devotees. His recordings exhibited stunning scenes and trying tricks with outstanding shooting areas, including the French Alps, Italian Dolomites, Hapin Bends in Norway, and the picturesque Laguna Oceanside in California. In May 2019, Josh shared his 13th crewed spat the series named race against the Tempest, which immediately got some decent momentum, gathering a noteworthy 117 million perspectives. This noticeable a huge achievement for Josh, being his sole video to outperform the 100 million perspectives blemish on YouTube. Preceding this accomplishment, his most seen recordings likewise arrived at great numbers, with one hitting 50 million perspectives and another arriving at 20 million perspectives, and this immediately grabbed the eye of top brands on the planet, including LG Engine, Patton, and Lexus, GoPro, Sony, Quicklift, Versatile, MVAM, and Premium Extravagance brand Prada. These coordinated efforts, joked experience, his enormous dreams voyaging and sharing his undertakings online. However, like any game, he realized there were gambles. With a long time back, he posted around quite possibly of his most difficult fall. I'm presently on a film trip, shooting content for this channel, and a day or two ago, I took one of the hardest falls of my life. I was skating down a mountain pass close to Sea in California, and I was hurled from my load up at around 55 mph and broke and separated my shoulder on influence as the adrenaline wore off. En route to the clinic, I was in more torment than I had been in seemingly forever anyway. Josh wasn't one to become complacent, and the day after his horrendous fall, he was back behind the camera recording, by and by not at all like the vast majority his age, who didn't have the cash. Josh had the potential chance to investigate the world. In December 2021, he shared a progression of pictures and clasps, displaying his undertakings including skydiving, climbing volcanoes, and swinging 4,000 ft over Southern California from a hot air swell. Despite the fact that his YouTube channel once began with recordings about skating, it had developed into significantly more, and had by then turned into a channel for way of life sports. His movements, skydiving and precipice bouncing, in 2021 Josh accepted YouTube's brilliant play button grant for arriving at 1 million supporters, yet with acquiring this a lot of endorsers, there comes a sensation of extraordinary obligation. In a web-based entertainment post in January 2022, Josh composed, "I've been requiring this previous month to truly chip away at tracking down better equilibrium in my life, putting my telephone down more frequently, being available, and not continuously feeling like I must be useful. It's certainly been a work underway, yet I've proactively seen a significant improvement in my by and large mental clearness and satisfaction." He added that he was stirred up to design more excursions, composing would rather not cross the line for the present, yet remain tuned anyway. Destiny had a savage turn coming up for him in February 2022. 22-year-old Josh ventured out to Iceland for the third time in a couple of months, just to encounter Aurora Borealis, which he had neglected to do as such on the past two excursions. When he at long last got to see them, he was glad to the point that he called his folks that very night to let them know it was the greatest evening of his life, much to their dismay that this would be the last time they heard their child's voice, since 2 days after the fact, misfortune would strike on the morning of Thursday, February 3, 2022. Josh awakened invigorated, very much like anybody would on a vacation. He was anticipating make a business for a Belgian road where brand dubious ante around 10:00 a.m. Josh loaded up the 1977 Cessna 172 and Skyhawk touring plane with tail number to Fab. He was joined by 26-year-old Belgian dubious ANP sponsorship supervisor Tim Ellings and 32-year-old Belgian skydiver and individual substance maker Nicola Bavia. The pilot was Harolda Diego, known as the Fountain of Liquid Magma pilot, one of Iceland's ideal and a trailblazer of photography visits. The four took off from Reykjavik Air Terminal at 10:38 a.m. on what was intended to be a 2-hour touring excursion to catch film of Iceland's shocking view. About an hour into the flight, Diego made a standard check with aviation authority demonstrating everything was working out as expected. He was devoted to exhibiting Iceland's staggering landscape to his travelers, guaranteeing they had the potential chance to catch uncommon photos anyway. Things didn't go as arranged. The plane, which should land at 12:38 p.m., was mysteriously gone, and as the clock approached 10 p.m., concerns emerged, and the circumstance raised significantly further when they found a concise crisis call to 112 made at 1151 AA. Probably coming from one of the travelers, there were no unmistakable correspondences in the call, except for somebody in trouble could be heard subsequent to following the call. It, to be sure, ended up being from the telephone of one of the travelers. The aeronautics specialists then understood that something had turned out badly by 1:32 p.m. Crisis conventions were in full impact. Security film from a close-by lake caught the eerie last snapshots of the flight, the airplane already flying calmly over the lake, with just the motor sound perceptible out of nowhere, started to drop towards the water, then, at that point, turned left and kept diving further. The airplane gave off an impression of being flying at an exceptionally low height over the water for around 7 seconds before it was seen colliding with the flimsy ice covering Iceland's biggest regular lake. Shockingly, the Cessna 172 vanished from the radar without giving any mayday calls or pain flags. The underlying pursuit endeavors immediately focused in on the lake's southern region. This choice depended on the airplane's most recent directions from his Avia Global Positioning Framework, which demonstrated that the plane was flying at a height of around 400 ft above ocean level, around 1,145 anyway. As additional proof arose, for example, the revelation of a traveler's telephone area and unsettling influences on the water surface, it became obvious that the hunt was centered around some unacceptable region. Subsequently, the inquiry's essential concentration. Moved to the new region, specialists promptly prepared a hunt and salvage activity, conveying particular groups furnished with the important stuff to lead the pursuit in the water. This activity would develop out to be Iceland's most broad pursuit and salvage mission in north of 10 years, including in excess of 1,000 inquiry and salvage laborers and volunteers, the Icelandic Coast Gatekeeper Police, and the Danish Flying Corps. The inquiry began at the Thingey Public Park, a famous landmark in Iceland. Anyway, regardless of having an exhaustive inquiry, the plane was never found on Thursday, on the 5th, after around 30 hours of search. The airplane conveying the 4 men was found at a profundity of 157 ft in the lake, around 2,624 feet from the closest shore. Anyway, there was no sight of the men inside the plane, and it would require one more day before a remote-controlled submarine and child. Our innovation saw the layout that ended up being a body lying at 121 ft underneath the surface. The other 3 were found further, around 155 top to bottom, 184 to 426 ft out south. The specialists trusted that the men gotten away from the plane, yet surrendered to the super cold water. Yet this hypothesis stays speculative, as the specific reasons for death and the examination discoveries were never uncovered at first. It was expected that jumpers would recover the bodies anyway. Every jumper would just be permitted one endeavor each day and could remain submerged for 20 minutes because of the cruel circumstances in the lake, since plunging would be excessively risky because of the super cold and ice arrangement on it. The lake boats must be utilized to break and clear the quickly shaping ice, with temperatures arriving at 14 F. Besides, as opposed to utilizing jumpers, the heroes utilized a little submarine outfitted with camera gear and a snatching arm. The submarine carries the bodies to the surface, where jumpers take over. Anyway, unfriendly weather patterns deferred the recovery of the bodies from the water, moving it back by a couple of additional days, until February 10th. Subsequent to getting the bodies to shore, it was affirmed that they had a place with the people who had been ready. The airplane, it was 14 days before the groups of the casualties could recuperate the collections of their friends and family to give them a legitimate last recognition. On February 11th, endeavors to recover the plane from the water were endlessly delayed due to deteriorate conditions in the water and the expanded risks presented to the jumpers planning to recuperate them. Plane continued in April, when the ice on the lake had softened at long last. On April 22, 2022, the plane was effectively pulled out of the water following the recuperation of the plane and bodies from the lake. An examination concerning the reason for the accident was started. The Vehicle Mishap Examination Board gave a primer report on the occurrence at Svatan. During the examination, different individual gadgets were recovered from the destruction. Early discoveries from the report demonstrate that sound accounts from recordings required upon the arrival of the accident proposed the plane's motor was functional. It was likewise resolved that travelers situated at the back were possible not wearing their safety belts at the hour of the accident. Besides, the pilot and the front traveler were found to be wearing just lap belts with their shoulder lashes not being used. Furthermore, life vests stayed in their bundling unused. Despite the fact that the reason for the accident couldn't be resolved, it is accepted that the pilot planned to play out a touch and go arriving on the ice to provide the travelers with a nearer perspective on the lake, yet couldn't climb again. In his 22 years, Josh achieved more than many do in a lifetime, abandoning a heritage that will keep on moving. Josh was recollected by his family as having a liberal soul and a profound sympathy for the oppressed-headed. To make an enduring distinction, he sent off a dress brand, devoting all benefits to building a water well in Uganda. In a meeting, Josh communicated his desire, saying, "I want to begin a philanthropic in the following 5 years. I'm attempting to do more magnanimous stuff, and the ultimate objective is to have a major cause that can switch experiences generally up the world. Josh was, at that point, on his way toward understanding this staggering vision, when his life was unfortunately stopped anyway, his not set in stone to maintain his inheritance and proceed with his beneficent undertakings by laying out the Josh Neuman establishment. Josh was not only a skateboarder, he was a swashbuckler on a fundamental level who brought us along on his excursion all over the planet, motivating us with his bold quest